Think back to today. The alarm that pulled you out of sleep. The commute that carried you away from home. The hours you gave to work or study. The small fragments of evening that disappeared into chores, screens, or conversations. Every one of those hours may have felt like your own, yet each was entangled in something larger. The clock on the wall did not only measure time passing, it measured value, exchange, obligation. If you pause long enough, you may notice a quiet discomfort. How much of the day was truly yours, and how much was already spoken for before it began? This is the first unsettling truth of modern life. We live as if time is our personal possession, something stored safely in our pockets like coins or folded bills, something we spend or save at will. But the reality is softer and stranger. Time is borrowed, bargained, budgeted. It is the invisible currency of existence, yet it slips away without receipt or record. You cannot hold it, cannot store it, cannot earn it back. Still, somehow, money has found a way to shape it, to bind it, to take hold of it as though time were just another product to be bought and sold. Consider the way days are divided, not simply into morning, afternoon, and night, but into schedules, meetings, deadlines, shifts, and quotas. You measure the value of an hour not by the warmth of the sun or the quiet of the evening, but by how much work can be fit inside it, how much pay it produces, or how much it costs if wasted. Even leisure is tinged with this awareness. The hour spent resting is measured against the hours of productivity it replaces, or the price of the entertainment purchased to fill it. The time you imagine is free already carries the fingerprints of money upon it. This shaping of time is not new. Long before smartphones buzzed with reminders, before factories rang bells to summon workers, even before coins first changed hands, humans understood that time could be exchanged. Farmers traded hours of daylight for survival. Artisans gave days of skill for sustenance. Servants labored in return for shelter and bread. Money did not invent the trade, but it gave it form. It set the terms, wrote the contracts, created the illusion that hours could be packaged neatly into wages and salaries. What had once been the rhythm of the seasons or the cycle of the sun became numbers on a payslip, hours sold and accounted for. And yet, in daily life, it rarely feels like a transaction. It feels like necessity, like routine, like the natural order of things. You wake, you work, you rest, you repeat. But beneath that rhythm, money whispers. Every minute at the desk, every hour behind the counter, every stretch of time logged on a timesheet is part of a quiet exchange. You are not only giving energy or skill, you are giving life itself, measured in hours you will never recover. The thought is simple, but when you pause with it, when you let it sink in, it becomes profound. This is why time feels so fragile, so precious, not because it is rare, but because it is the only thing you cannot reclaim. Once it is gone forever. And yet we live in a world where that irretrievable treasure is sold daily, casually, invisibly. Most of us never question it. We accept the bargain as though it were natural, as though it had always been this way, as though there were no other possible way to live. But perhaps it is worth asking, when did we agree to sell the hours of our lives? Did we ever choose it, or was it chosen for us, carved silently into the structure of society long before we were born? Take a moment here. Let your breath slow. Notice the clock in the room, or the quiet sense of time moving forward as you listen. This very moment, too, belongs somewhere. It is part of a day framed by work, obligations, and routines. And yet for now, as you lie here, it is reclaimed, drifting gently beyond money's grip. This is the paradox we will explore tonight. That time feels personal and private, yet so often it is priced, borrowed, or sold without our noticing. To understand this fully, we must begin with the most obvious exchange of all, the one so familiar we rarely pause to question it. The simple, startling fact that much of your life is not paid in money, but in hours, and that those hours themselves are the true currency beneath every paycheck. This is where our journey begins, with the reality that time itself is placed on the market. Chapter 1. Time for Sale. And so, if the introduction leaves us with the unsettling realization that time is not fully ours, it is only natural to begin with the simplest and clearest expression of that truth, the selling of hours themselves. For in the modern world, to live is to labor, and to labor is to divide life into increments of time that can be exchanged for money. This is the bargain at the center of nearly every life, and it is so deeply ingrained that we rarely pause to notice it. You agree to work for 8 hours, or 10, or 12, and in exchange, you receive a wage, a salary, a payment that seems to reward skill or effort, but is, in truth, a purchase of your hours. The paycheck does not say it outright, but hidden beneath the numbers is the quiet fact that pieces of your life have been sold. Consider the routine. You wake not when your body chooses, but when an alarm tells you it is time. You commute not to wherever the day calls, but to a predetermined place at a predetermined time, where the hours between morning and evening have already been claimed. You return home not with a sense of freedom, but with the fatigue of hours already traded away. Even your so-called free hours in the evening are shaped by the workday that preceded them, and the one that will follow tomorrow. The rhythm of the clock is no longer the rhythm of nature. It is the rhythm of a contract. What is remarkable is how natural it feels. Most of us never question the idea that life should be divided into work hours and free hours, that the hours of work should be exchanged for wages, and that the measure of a person's worth should often be calculated by how much their time is worth to an employer. But step back for a moment. Ask yourself, who decided that an hour of your life should be given a price? Who decided that 1 hour of one person's life could be worth 100 times more than another's? Why should the stroke of the same clock hand produce vastly different rewards depending on whose hand happens to be moving along with it? The truth is that money hides inside the clock face. The seconds, minutes, and hours appear neutral, but they are not. They are saturated with value, with inequality, with decisions made long before you ever took your first job. The invention of wages transformed time from something lived into something owned, something transferable, something to be packaged and distributed. It was once possible to imagine a life where time flowed according to need or rhythm or season. But in the wage economy, time is segmented, sold, and rationed. You begin to think of life itself as a balance sheet of hours. Imagine 2 people side by side in a cafe, sipping coffee. One earns a salary that translates into $100 for every hour worked. The other earns 10. Both spend the same hour drinking coffee, but in one calculation, the hour is expensive. In the other, it is cheap. One feels the indulgence, the luxury of taking time away from work. The other feels the cost, the strain, the weight of money lost. And so the same 60 minutes is not the same at all. The same hour has been priced differently, and that price quietly shapes the experience. This is why time itself becomes stratified. It is no longer a shared river in which we all swim together, but a marketplace in which some can afford to linger and others must hurry. The wealthy buy leisure, hire assistants, delegate tasks, purchase conveniences that return hours to them. The poor must sell more hours just to survive, filling days and nights with labor that leaves little left to call their own. Thus, inequality is not only about money, it is about time. To have wealth is to reclaim hours. To lack wealth is to surrender them. And yet, even for those who imagine themselves free, the bargain persists. The entrepreneur who declares independence from employers still sells time, only now to clients or markets. The artist who escapes the office still calculates the hours spent creating against the money earned to sustain life. Even the retired, who no longer rise to alarms or commutes, discover that their time is circumscribed by pensions, savings, and healthcare bills. There is no space entirely untouched by the quiet truth. Time is always being priced, always being measured. This raises a question worth lingering on. If life is nothing but time, and time is constantly being sold, then what remains truly ours? Each hour spent at work is gone forever, replaced by money that may sustain, entertain, or accumulate. But the hour itself is unrecoverable. No payment can return it. A day given to labor is a day erased, and though wages may soften the loss, they do not undo it. This is the silent cost of time for sale, that we are always exchanging the irreplaceable for the temporary. Think of how this bargain shapes identity. Ask someone who they are, and often they answer with their job title: teacher, banker, carpenter, driver, nurse, as if the sale of their hours defines the whole of their being. Even in casual conversation, the question, "What do you do?" really means, what do you sell your hours for? Time for sale becomes time as identity, until we cannot easily distinguish between who we are and what we do to earn money. There is also a quiet violence in this arrangement, for the one thing money cannot create is more time. It can only reallocate it, redistribute it, take it from one place and place it elsewhere. Each of us lives within the same 24 hours, but the market finds ways to stretch or compress them. Those with money purchase hours of others, housekeepers, drivers, laborers, thereby reclaiming their own. Those without money must surrender their own hours, stacking labor upon labor, selling sleep, health, and leisure to make ends meet. The exchange is not neutral. It reshapes entire lives. Pause here. Let yourself imagine a ledger, not of dollars and cents, but of hours. Every line is a piece of your life already given away. Every column is a block of existence already sold. It is a sobering image, but a true one. And it is why the illusion of free time so rarely holds. For even when you are away from work, the memory of hours lost and the anticipation of hours to come cast a shadow over the present. There is another, subtler layer here. Time is not only sold in contracts and paychecks. It is sold in the way we measure productivity, the way we demand efficiency, the way we squeeze more into each passing moment. Even students, long before they enter the workforce, learn to divide their days into measurable units of study, achievement, and performance. The classroom becomes the training ground for the wage economy, teaching not only subjects, but the discipline of selling time. And yet, the strange part is that we accept all this as inevitable. We treat the sale of hours as though it were part of the natural order, like the rising of the sun or the changing of the seasons. But there is nothing natural about it. It is a structure, a system, a construction. Time for sale is a creation of money, and it holds us more firmly than any chain. But this raises a deeper paradox. If every hour sold is gone forever, what of the hours we sell before they even arrive? What of the time promised in advance, borrowed from the future, mortgaged against the unknown? For in the modern world, it is not only today's time that is for sale, but tomorrow's as well. Student loans, mortgages, credit card balances, all of these are contracts that trade future hours for present needs. They extend the marketplace of time beyond the present moment, binding us not only in what we do today, but in what we must do tomorrow. And so, as we move forward, the question deepens. If selling today's hours is the basic bargain, what happens when we begin to sell the hours we have not yet lived? This is the path that leads us to the next realization, the next hidden truth. For if the present can be priced, the future can be mortgaged. This is where we turn now, to the debt of hours, the unseen contracts that claim not only our present days, but the days yet to come. This is Chapter 2, The Debt of Hours. Chapter 2, Debt of Hours. If selling today's hours is the most visible bargain of life under money's influence, then promising away tomorrow's hours is the quiet, more insidious bargain that almost everyone makes without fully realizing its weight. For it is not only the present that can be sold. The future, too, can be packaged, borrowed against, mortgaged, and claimed before it has even arrived. This is the world of debt, where time itself is collateral, where the hours you have not yet lived are already spoken for, tethered to contracts and obligations that extend their reach far beyond the moment you now inhabit. Consider the student taking on a loan to attend school. At first glance, it appears simple. Money borrowed today, money repaid tomorrow. But beneath this surface lies something stranger. What is being repaid is not merely money. It is hours of future labor. Every borrowed dollar is a claim on days, months, even years that have not yet been lived. The student agrees, perhaps without feeling the weight of it, to surrender thousands of hours in advance. And so their future time is not theirs, even before it arrives. It has already been promised to banks, to institutions, to systems that quietly count their hours long before they are spent. Mortgages, too, are contracts not only about houses, but about years of labor pledged to secure a place to live. A 30-year mortgage is not merely a financial arrangement. It is a claim on 30 years of hours. It means that before you even turn the key in your new door, decades of your future life are already sold. Each monthly payment is a reminder that your time has been borrowed against, that your future self has been mortgaged in order for your present self to have shelter. You may call it ownership, but in truth, you are renting your own time from your future. Credit cards make the exchange even subtler. A swipe of plastic feels like a moment of freedom, the ability to take now and worry later. But the worry always comes. Freedom is not free. What has been spent is not only money, but the future labor required to pay it back. When you sign your name at the bottom of the slip, you are also signing away fragments of tomorrow. Perhaps it will be only a few hours, perhaps a few weeks, perhaps years if the debt deepens. But the truth is the same. You are living today by selling tomorrow. There is a peculiar paradox here. Debt allows you to borrow against the future, but the future itself is never guaranteed. You promise away years of labor that may or may not come, hours that may or may not unfold. A job may be lost, health may falter, the economy may shift, yet the contract remains insistent, unforgiving. The lender does not care whether the future arrives as you expect. It only cares that the hours promised are delivered. And so, debt binds you to a version of the future that may never exist, chaining you to possibilities that feel certain on paper but fragile in life. In this way, debt makes time heavier. Every choice you make is filtered through the shadow of hours already promised. You cannot take a job freely. You must take the job that pays enough to satisfy the obligations. You cannot move cities easily. The weight of debt anchors you. Even your decisions about love, family, and leisure are shaped by the invisible claim that debt places on your future. It is not only your wallet that is restricted, it is your freedom to spend time as you wish. For debt narrows possibilities, collapsing the vast openness of tomorrow into the narrow path of repayment. Think of the young worker who dreams of traveling the world. The student loan bill arrives each month. The credit card statement follows. The dream is deferred, not because the world is closed to them, but because their time has already been sold elsewhere. Or think of the couple who would like to reduce their working hours, to spend more time with children or aging parents. They cannot, because the mortgage requires every paycheck. Time is not only money, it is debt. And debt makes time into a cage. This arrangement is not an accident. Debt is not simply a tool. It is a system designed to harness future labor. Banks and institutions thrive not by selling products, but by selling time. Each loan is a chain reaching into the future. Each contract a quiet claim on hours yet unborn. The lender profits not from the present moment, but from the promise of what you will do tomorrow, next month, next decade. Debt transforms the future into an asset to be bought and sold. And so, your life becomes a series of installments, a sequence of payments that carve the future into units already spoken for. Pause here and let the weight of that thought settle. Imagine your future days stacked before you, like pages in a book not yet written. Now imagine that many of those pages already bear ink. The writing is faint, perhaps, but it is there. Due dates, interest payments, monthly installments. The story of your future has already been outlined, not by you alone, but by the contracts you have signed. Your time is not a blank page. It is a ledger. What makes this especially haunting is that debt often disguises itself as opportunity. The student loan promises education and advancement. The mortgage promises stability and shelter. The credit card promises freedom and flexibility. And sometimes these promises are true, but always beneath them is the same quiet reality. Tomorrow's hours are already sold. What appears to be a door to freedom is, at the same time, a lock on future time. There is another layer still. Debt is not only personal, it is collective. Nations themselves borrow against the future, issuing bonds, accruing deficits, promising to repay decades later. Entire generations are born beneath the shadow of debts they did not incur, yet must live within. The taxes they pay, the services they receive, the opportunities available to them are all shaped by obligations signed long before their births. This is the debt of history, the inheritance of time sold by others. And so, debt not only binds the individual, it binds the collective future. At its heart, debt is a story of power. Those who hold debt hold not only money, but the future itself. They control not only what you can buy, but how you must spend your days. Debt dictates choices, narrows options, defines possibilities. And yet, most of us accept it as normal, as inevitable, as the price of participation in the modern world. Few stop to ask whether it is truly natural to live lives already mortgaged, futures already sold. Take another slow breath. Let the thought sink in. Every time debt is incurred, a fragment of the future is surrendered. What you believe will be yours is already someone else's. The hours ahead are not free and open. They are spoken for, promised, constrained, and yet life continues. We work, we borrow, we repay. We shoulder the debt and carry it forward like invisible weight pressing down on each day. But debt does more than claim the future. It changes the present too. For every borrowed hour creates a pressure, a sense that time must be used productively, efficiently, earnestly, lest the debt grow heavier. It creates an atmosphere of waiting, of watching the calendar, of counting the days until obligations are due. Debt turns life into a sequence of deadlines, each month another reminder that the future is already owned. And so we wait. We wait for payments to clear, for balances to shrink, for the long years of repayment to end. Waiting itself becomes the condition of life under debt. And this, perhaps, is the most ironic transformation of all. In selling future time, we also surrender the present to waiting. We stand in lines, sit in traffic, queue in offices, not simply because systems are inefficient, but because our time has already been devalued. Those with wealth can buy immediacy, skip lines, and avoid waits. Those without must endure, their hours considered expendable, interchangeable, less valuable. Waiting is the hidden cost of debt, the invisible interest paid not in money, but in time wasted. And so, the story of debt leads us inevitably to the story of waiting. For once the future is mortgaged, the present becomes a place of suspension, a limbo of hours neither free nor fully owned. Debt chains us to tomorrow, but waiting chains us to today. Together, they reveal another hidden way money governs time, by deciding who must wait and who may pass freely. And so we step now into this next reflection, into the quiet truth that waiting itself has become a kind of currency, traded and priced like everything else. Chapter 3. Waiting as a currency. If debt binds the future and makes us wait for the long years of repayment, then waiting itself becomes a kind of debt paid in the present. It is the quiet, often invisible cost of living without privilege. The currency exchanged not in dollars or coins, but in hours of human life spent suspended, stalled, delayed. To wait is to spend time without choice, to hand over pieces of existence not for money, but for the possibility of something that money controls. And though we rarely stop to see it this way, waiting has always been an unspoken currency, one that reveals how unequally time is valued among us. Think of the countless lines that shape daily life. The line at the bank, the line at the grocery store, the line at the doctor's office. Each one consumes minutes, sometimes hours, and yet they feel natural, inevitable. You shuffle forward slowly, inch by inch, exchanging your time for the right to move, the right to be served, the right to continue. The line is a market, though no money changes hands. Its price is time, and its terms are rarely negotiable. But not everyone waits the same. The wealthy buy speed, private banking, premium memberships, concierge services. The poor, lacking this leverage, pay with hours. Thus, waiting reveals itself as a tax on those whose money cannot shorten the line. Traffic is another stage on which waiting performs its quiet tyranny. Hours lost on congested roads, engines idling, drivers growing restless. For some, the loss is small. offset by the ability to live closer to work, to afford faster transportation, to pay for shortcuts like toll roads or private rides. For others, the commute swallows enormous portions of the day, devouring time that could have been spent with family, in rest, or in creativity. The road becomes another market of time, where money decides whose hours are spared and whose are consumed in asphalt purgatory. Waiting also governs the institutions of life. Think of the endless bureaucracies. Applications submitted, approvals delayed, documents processed at their own glacial pace. In hospitals, patients wait for hours, sometimes days, to be seen. In courts, cases drag for years before resolution. In immigration offices, entire lifetimes may be held in suspension. Here, waiting is not incidental. It is systemic. It is the deliberate stretching of time, the control of human lives through delay. And again, money bends the rules. Those who can pay for private health care bypass the waiting room. Those who can afford powerful lawyers move their cases more swiftly. Those who lack means must surrender their hours, sometimes their best years, to the limbo of waiting. This is where we begin to see waiting, not simply as inconvenience, but as inequality written in time. To wait is not the same for everyone. For the privileged, waiting is often optional, avoidable, a nuisance easily evaded. For the rest, it is compulsory, inescapable, a recurring toll that drains the currency of life itself. The inequality of wealth thus creates an inequality of hours. Some live in fast lanes, others live in queues. And once you see it, the pattern becomes impossible to ignore. Waiting has another cruelty. It is time without value returned. When you sell your hours in labor, you receive wages in exchange. When you wait, you are paid nothing. The employer compensates you for the hours you spend working, but not for the hours you spend waiting in traffic to arrive. The airline apologizes for the delay, but rarely reimburses you for the time lost in a terminal. The bureaucracy wastes your days with paperwork and holds, but the compensation, if it ever arrives, does not restore the vanished hours. Waiting is pure expense, the subtraction of life without the return of money. And yet, waiting is not without its markets. Whole industries profit from it. Think of airport shops and fast food counters that feed delayed passengers, streaming platforms that profit from idle hours, smartphone apps that occupy the restless fingers of those stuck in lines. The economy feeds on waiting, turning idle time into consumption, transforming frustration into profit. You are told to wait and then sold distractions to fill the gap. Even idleness is monetized. Even patience is taxed. There is a strange paradox here, too. In waiting, we feel powerless, yet in a world so saturated with schedules and obligations, waiting sometimes becomes the only space left unclaimed. A line forces you to pause. A delay halts your momentum. The modern economy consumes nearly every hour, but waiting gives you back a sliver of stillness, even if unwillingly. Some people fill it with scrolling, others with thought, a few with silence. But always, the hour slips away. Waiting may create space for reflection, but it is still life spent without choice, still a cost extracted by systems that do not care who pays. Pause here. Imagine the hours you have lost to waiting. The forgotten afternoons at government offices, the evenings wasted in traffic, the mornings swallowed by queues. Imagine them stacked together, day upon day, a silent collection of hours you never chose to give. How much of your life has been drained by these invisible taxes? And more haunting still, what else might you have done with those hours, had they been yours? What makes waiting especially profound is how it shapes the rhythm of life itself. When so much of existence is consumed by waiting, anticipation becomes its own kind of labor. You are always leaning forward into what has not yet arrived, always preparing for the moment when waiting ends. In this way, waiting colonizes not only the hours that pass, but the state of mind within them. It trains you to live not in the present, but in expectation, in longing for release. Time, instead of being lived, becomes something to be endured. And again, inequality deepens the wound. Those with wealth are protected from long waits, and so their time feels fuller, more theirs. Those without are condemned to limbo, and so their time feels fragmented, incomplete. Waiting teaches you your place in the hierarchy. To be made to wait is to be reminded that your time is less valuable, that your hours can be taken from you without apology. It is not only delay, it is humiliation, written in the language of time. Yet there is another angle still. Waiting reveals the obsession with productivity that defines modern existence. To wait is to be unproductive, to be stalled, to fall out of sync with the demands of money. And because productivity has become a moral command, the belief that every hour must produce, must create, must earn, waiting feels like sin, like wasted life. Even in restlessness, the waiting body is still consumed by guilt. And so we fill waiting with distraction, with tasks, with purchases, trying to disguise idleness as usefulness. The paradox deepens. Waiting is forced idleness, yet we cannot even allow ourselves to be idle without shame. This reveals the next step in the story. For waiting is not only about delay, nor only about inequality. It is also about the deeper structure of life, shaped by the demand for productivity. We are taught to measure time not in lived experience, but in output, not in presence, but in performance. Waiting feels unbearable, not only because it steals hours, but because it violates the command that every hour must be used. Waiting exposes us to the truth we try to avoid, that life is slipping past, whether it is productive or not. And so, waiting is not only a tax on time, it is a reminder of mortality itself. Take a breath here. Let the thought settle. The hours you wait are gone forever, as surely as the hours you work. But unlike labor, they leave nothing behind, no wage, no product, no reward. They are pure subtraction. Waiting reveals how fragile time truly is, and how money has arranged life so that some can waste no hours at all, while others are condemned to lose them endlessly. And this, at last, brings us to the next truth. If waiting is unbearable, it is because we live in a world that commands productivity above all. Every hour must produce, every moment must be useful, every breath must be justified. This command has become so natural, so internalized, that even when waiting is forced upon us, we feel guilt for not producing. This is the next chain money places upon us, the chain of productivity, the invisible command that even time itself must be profitable. Waiting is only one side of this coin. The other side is the relentless demand that life itself become efficient, productive, measurable. And so, as we move forward, we turn from the passivity of waiting to the activity of labor pushed to its limits. We step from suspension into acceleration, from idle hours into hours stretched to breaking. Chapter 4. Productivity Chains. If waiting is the pause we cannot bear, then productivity is the command we cannot escape. Modern life has bound us to the belief that every hour must produce, that every moment must be measured, that even idleness is wasteful unless it can be converted into some form of output. This obsession, did not arrive overnight. It is the result of centuries of conditioning the long shadow of factory schedules and economic systems that have taught us to see time not as a flowing river, but as a series of containers to be filled, optimized, and maximized. And though waiting feels like imprisonment, productivity is a prison of its own, one with walls so invisible that many of us never realize we are trapped inside. Think of the language we use: to spend time, to save time, to waste time, to invest time. Every phrase borrows from the vocabulary of money, as though time itself were a financial asset to be handled with care. These words shape how we live. They whisper that every second must count, every hour must be justified, every day must yield a return. Productivity becomes not only a requirement of work, but a moral imperative. The busy are praised. The idle are judged. Efficiency is treated as virtue, slowness as sin. Even rest must be defended, explained, rationalized. This way of thinking has roots in the rise of industrial labor, when factories demanded punctuality, precision, and output. The whistle that summoned workers, the clock that measured their shifts, the overseer who tracked their pace, all of these turned human life into a system of measurable units. Productivity was born as a discipline, an ideology, a way of bending bodies and minds into the rhythm of machines. And though factories may have given way to offices and whistles to emails, the ideology remains. We are still measured by what we produce, still driven to prove the worth of our hours by their efficiency. But the factory was only the beginning. Over time, productivity seeped into every corner of life. In school, children learn to divide their days into schedules, assignments, deadlines. Success is measured not only by what they know, but by how quickly they can deliver it. In adulthood, the demand only intensifies. Workplaces evaluate performance by output, by targets, by deliverables. Even outside of work, the command persists. Exercise must be tracked. Meals must be optimized for health. Leisure must be filled with activities that improve skills, expand knowledge, or enrich the mind. We are trained to believe that even joy must be useful, that even love must be efficient, that even silence must be productive. The paradox is cruel, for the more we chase productivity, the more elusive it becomes. There is always another task, another improvement, another way to optimize. The to-do list never ends. The efficiency never satisfies. The chain tightens with each step until life itself feels like one long series of obligations, each hour linked to the next in an unbroken chain of tasks. And in this endless pursuit, we lose the ability to simply exist, to sit quietly, to breathe without purpose, to let time pass without measure. Pause here and think of your own life. How many hours have been swallowed by the compulsion to do more, to achieve more, to prove more? How many evenings meant for rest have been invaded by the voice that says, just one more email, just one more task, just one more improvement? How many moments of stillness have been broken by the thought that you are falling behind, wasting time, failing to use it wisely? Productivity is a command that never ends. It drives us, but it never releases us. This obsession also creates strange distortions. We treat multitasking as virtue, even though it fractures our attention. We treat exhaustion as a badge of honor, even though it erodes our health. We treat busyness as proof of importance, even though it often masks emptiness. Productivity turns life into theater, where the appearance of efficiency matters as much as the reality. We rush, we scramble, we fill our days with tasks, not always because they matter, but because being seen as busy feels safer than being seen as idle. And yet, the more we submit to this logic, the more fragile we become. Burnout spreads like epidemic, exhaustion becomes ordinary, anxiety seeps into the fabric of daily life. Still, the chain holds. To pause feels dangerous, to slow down feels like failure, to rest feels like guilt. Productivity has not only shaped our schedules, it has shaped our sense of self. We define our worth by output, and so we cannot stop producing without feeling worthless. Here, too, inequality sharpens the edges. For those with wealth, productivity can be outsourced. They hire assistants, cleaners, drivers, nannies, people who carry the burden of tasks so that their employers can reclaim their time. But those without such resources must squeeze more into every hour, stretch themselves thinner, push themselves harder. Productivity becomes survival. The chain weighs heaviest on those least able to bear it, forcing them to run faster just to stay in place. The irony is that this obsession promises freedom. Work hard, be productive, maximize your hours, and someday you will earn enough to rest. But often the opposite happens. The pursuit of productivity becomes endless. The promise of rest is always delayed, always postponed to some future that never quite arrives. Retirement, vacation, leisure, all are framed as rewards for productivity, yet many never reach them or arrive too tired to enjoy them. In this way, productivity does not free us. It enslaves us. It keeps us moving, always moving, in circles that never end. Take a slow breath. Feel the rhythm of your own life, the pulse of your days. How much of it is truly yours? How much is driven by the invisible command to do more, to prove more, to squeeze more from each passing moment? Productivity whispers that it will reward you, but often it only takes. It erodes the very thing it claims to value, the richness of lived time. And yet, there is another layer still. Productivity does not only consume our working hours, it consumes our resting ones as well. Leisure is no longer simply leisure. It is rebranded as self-care, personal development, quality time, all terms that disguise rest as productivity in another form. A walk is not just a walk, it is exercise. A conversation is not just talk, it is networking. A vacation is not just an escape, it is an investment in mental health, so you can return to work more efficient than before. Even sleep is now treated as performance, tracked by devices, measured by apps, optimized for maximum recovery. Productivity has colonized not only our waking hours, but even the hours meant to restore us. And here, at last, we begin to see the chain's full reach. Productivity is not just about work. It is about the colonization of life itself. It dictates how we eat, how we move, how we rest, how we dream. It leaves no moment untouched. And yet, the chain is invisible, disguised as virtue, wrapped in the language of progress and improvement. It is a chain we willingly carry, even as it bends our backs and narrows our lives. But perhaps the most tragic cost of this chain is what it does to rest itself. For rest should be freedom, the one place outside the logic of money, the one refuge from productivity's demand. But under the economy of efficiency, rest is never truly free. It is scheduled, purchased, packaged, optimized. It is sold back to us as products, services, and experiences. We do not simply rest, we buy rest. And so, even in the hours meant for freedom, money holds the reins. This is where the story turns next. If productivity has colonized life, then rest has become its final frontier, the place where money seeps even into silence. For leisure, vacation, and even sleep itself are now sold, monetized, and measured. And so, we must move forward to the next hidden truth, that even rest has a cost, that even stillness has been purchased, that even freedom must now be rented back from the economy. Chapter 5. The Cost of Rest. If productivity has chained every hour to the demand for output, then rest becomes the fragile counterweight, the promise of release. Yet even here, in the space that should belong only to us, money finds its way in. Rest is no longer simply the pause between labors, the natural rhythm of breathing in and out, of effort and recovery. It has become a commodity, packaged and priced, sold back to us as if stillness itself were a product on a shelf. And so, even the time meant to restore us carries a cost, a quiet reminder that there is no place left untouched by money's hand. Think of the vacation, once imagined as escape. For many, it is no longer spontaneous or free, but tightly scheduled, purchased through airlines, hotels, tour packages, and entertainment passes. The idea of getting away is itself a market, where rest is promised for a fee, where freedom is traded for resort wristbands, spa treatments, and curated experiences. We do not simply rest, we buy the performance of rest. We are sold an image of relaxation, the beach chair, the mountain view, the quiet retreat, and we pay for the chance to inhabit it. Even our desire to do nothing is monetized, rebranded, and sold back as a lifestyle. Closer to home, weekends and evenings are filled with rest that has been quietly purchased. Streaming services offer distraction. Restaurants promise ease, gyms and yoga studios sell wellness. Even a bath is accompanied by products marketed as luxury, comfort, or self-care. What should be the simple act of stepping away from labor becomes an economic choice, where the quality of rest is measured by how much one can afford to invest in it. Those with wealth rest in luxury. Those without must accept rest in fragments, in overcrowded homes, in exhausted bodies that collapse at the end of long days. But the paradox deepens. Rest itself is now reframed as a tool for more productivity. We are told to sleep better, not because it is good in itself, but because it makes us sharper at work. We are told to take vacations not for joy, but to recharge and return more efficiently. Meditation, once a practice of silence, is marketed as a way to boost focus and performance. Even leisure is justified not by pleasure, but by its usefulness to labor. In this way, rest is no longer rest. It is simply another gear in the machinery of productivity, measured not by how it frees us, but by how it makes us more profitable when we return. Consider how technology has invaded even the most private form of rest, sleep. Devices track our movements, measure our cycles, grade our slumber. We wake not simply refreshed, but scored, as if the night itself were an exam. The act of lying still, unconscious and vulnerable, is transformed into data, optimized for efficiency. Even dreams are monitored, analyzed, and bent toward performance. Sleep, once the last refuge from productivity, is now monetized, app-feed, colonized. This reveals something unsettling, that there is almost no space left unpriced. Even silence is filled with subscriptions. Even the desire to stop is woven into the economy. To rest is no longer to withdraw from money's grasp, but to participate in it differently. We buy candles, blankets, teas, and wellness retreats. We subscribe to calmness, rent tranquility, and invest in stillness. Rest is marketed to us as if it were a product we cannot create on our own. And so, we are made to feel guilty if we do not purchase it, as though genuine rest were beyond us without the market's guidance. Pause here. Think of the last time you rested. Was it free? Was it truly yours? Or was it framed, packaged, or mediated by something sold to you? A trip, a product, a service. How often do you feel the weight of guilt even in stillness? The whisper that says, you should be doing more. You should be using this time better. You should not be idle. This is the cost of rest in the modern world. Not only financial, but emotional. We pay not only with money, but with guilt, with anxiety, with the suspicion that we have failed if our rest is not useful. There is also the inequality of rest. For some, rest is abundant, woven easily into lives cushioned by wealth. They retreat to second homes, take extended vacations, pay for massages, wellness coaches, or private retreats. Their rest is structured, luxurious, full of choice. For others, rest is scarce, stolen between shifts, carved into overcrowded weekends, broken by the demands of survival. Their rest is not spacious but cramped, not restorative but fragile. The inequality of money becomes the inequality of rest, and thus even the act of doing nothing reveals the hierarchy of wealth. This is why exhaustion spreads like a shadow across modern society. For many, rest never truly arrives. Even when the body collapses into sleep, the mind remains busy with debt, with obligations, with schedules waiting for morning. Even in vacation, the phone buzzes with emails. The mind rehearses to-do lists. The spirit remains tethered to labor. Rest has been commodified and subordinated, and so it rarely restores. It merely pauses the chain for a moment before tightening again. And yet, the cruelest irony is that we treat this as normal. We joke about needing vacations from our vacations, about sleep debt, about the impossibility of ever feeling caught up. But beneath the humor lies despair. We are creatures who crave stillness, yet we live in systems that deny it, except when sold back to us in pieces. We are built for rhythm, for cycles of exertion and renewal, but we are trapped in acceleration without relief. And so, exhaustion becomes ordinary, the background hum of modern existence. Take a breath. Let your own body speak. How often do you feel truly rested? How often do you wake without weight, without the sense of rushing into another day already claimed? For most, the answer is rare, perhaps never. This is the tragedy of rest in a world ruled by money. It is promised, sold, marketed, but rarely given. It is spoken of constantly, but seldom felt. And yet, rest is not only a personal matter. It is also collective, structural. Nations themselves struggle with the rhythm of rest. Some cultures mandate shorter work weeks, midday pauses, or long vacations. Others push their citizens to work until collapse, offering rest only as occasional luxury. These choices are not neutral. They reflect economic priorities. A society that values profit above all sacrifices rests collectively, while a society that values balance makes space for stillness. In both cases, the economy dictates not only how individuals rest, but how entire populations breathe. But the story does not end here, for rest is also entangled with the passing of years. The greatest rest promised by the economy is retirement, the long pause after decades of labor, the final reward for a lifetime of productivity. Yet here, too, the cost is profound. Retirement is purchased with decades of work, with pensions and savings, with health often already worn thin. Many never live to see it. Others arrive too tired to enjoy it. Rest, deferred to the end of life, becomes not freedom but tragedy, the cruelest example of how money governs even the rhythms of aging. This is the path we now follow. If rest itself is sold, if sleep and vacation and leisure are priced and packaged, then what of the longer arc of life? What of the way money reaches aging, into retirement, into the final years of existence? If rest has a cost, then surely the passage of time itself carries a price, one that grows heavier as the body weakens, as the years accumulate, as the expiration date of life approaches. And so we step forward into the next hidden truth, that even aging has been commodified, that even decline is measured in economics, that even the end of time is etched with money's mark. Chapter 6. Aging and Expiration Dates. If rest itself is sold back to us in fragments, then aging is the longest payment plan of all, a slow and relentless reminder that our hours are not infinite and that money's grip only tightens as the years unfold. From the first moment of labor to the last breath of retirement, time and money dance together, entwined in ways that shape not only our days, but the arc of entire lives. We are told that the reward for work is freedom at the end, that if we trade enough hours in youth, we will earn the luxury of rest in age. And yet, for so many, the final chapters of life do not bring freedom, but another form of captivity. As the body weakens, as health declines, and as the economy extracts its last debts, think of the promise of retirement. It is offered as the great rest at the end of the long road, the golden years when labor is behind you and time is finally your own. Yet how often is that promise fulfilled? For decades, we sell our hours, saving small pieces of money in pensions, in retirement funds, in savings accounts, always with the idea that one day we will buy back the freedom to rest. But by the time that day arrives, the body is often worn, the spirit tired, the appetite for adventure diminished. We trade the vitality of our younger years for the faint hope of freedom in older ones, only to discover that freedom itself has an expiration date. The cruel truth is that many never reach the promised land at all. Illness strikes early, accidents intervene, life ends before retirement begins. Others arrive at retirement only to find that their savings are insufficient, their pensions unstable, their security fragile. Instead of freedom, they find themselves working again, in smaller jobs, in part-time labor, simply to survive. Aging becomes not the release from labor, but the extension of it. Another decade of hours sold when they were supposed to be reclaimed. Retirement, then, is not rest freely given. It is rest granted only to those who can afford it, and even then, only for as long as health allows. Pause here and imagine the hours of your own future. Imagine decades spent working, saving, sacrificing, always deferring joy to some later chapter. Now imagine that chapter never arriving, or arriving only in a diminished form, when energy is scarce and years are few. This is the tragedy of aging under money's rule, that life is structured as if time were infinite, when in truth it is fragile and finite, slipping away with every passing year. Healthcare makes the paradox sharper. In youth, we spend time to earn money, but in old age, we spend money to buy time. Medical bills, treatments, medications, and procedures become the price of survival. Each year lived longer often comes with greater expense, as if the privilege of continuing life must be purchased. For the wealthy, this may mean advanced care, private doctors, and experimental treatments. For the poor, It often means neglect, rationing, suffering, and lives cut short, not by nature alone, but by economics. The inequality of aging is brutal. Some live decades longer, cushioned by wealth, while others see their time shortened, not by fate, but by cost. Even death itself has become a market. Funerals, burials, cremations, memorials, all are packaged and sold, each with a price tag that turns the final chapter of life into another transaction. The end of time does not escape money's reach. It is scripted by it. And so, from birth to death, from the first cry to the final silence, money weaves itself into every stage, measuring not only how we live, but how we die. But perhaps the most haunting truth is the way money shapes not only the length of life, but the quality of it. The elderly with means can spend their final years in comfort, in warm homes, surrounded by care. The elderly without means may find themselves in institutions stripped of dignity, in poverty that isolates and erodes. Aging is not merely a biological process. It is an economic one. And the experience of it, whether soft or cruel, is dictated as much by the contents of a bank account as by the strength of a heart. Think of the way society speaks of the old. Too often, they are framed not as people, but as costs, as burdens on the system, as drains on resources. Pensions and health care are debated not as lifelines, but as expenses, liabilities, debts to be managed. Even in the final stretch of life, people are measured not by who they are, but by what they cost. To age in such a world is to become, in some sense, devalued, reduced to a calculation of expense against productivity. Time itself becomes a liability once it is no longer tied to labor. And yet, there is dignity in aging, dignity that no system can fully erase. To grow old is to embody memory, to hold the weight of decades, to carry wisdom forged through survival. But even this dignity is filtered through money. Stories of longevity often focus not only on age but on wealth. The centenarian who lives comfortably in assisted care, the retiree who travels the world, the aged scholar who continues to publish. Rarely do we celebrate those who age in poverty, though their endurance may be no less remarkable. In this silence, we see again how money shapes not only the experience of time, but the stories we tell about it. Pause once more. Imagine the passage of years not as an abstract arc, but as a ledger, each decade a column, each year a line. In youth, the ledger is filled with hours of labor. In middle age, it is filled with hours of debt repayment, of responsibility, of productivity. And in old age, the ledger does not close. It simply shifts, filling with hours spent in doctors' offices, in waiting rooms, in battles with insurance, in the slow negotiation of decline. The ledger is never erased. It is carried to the end. This is the shadow beneath the promise of retirement. That time itself is treated as an asset to be managed, extended, and maximized, even when it slips beyond our control. We are told to plan carefully, to save diligently, to invest wisely, as if these could grant us mastery over time. But in the end, time cannot be mastered. It can only be lived, and it ends for all, regardless of wealth. The difference is only in how those years are shaped, whether they are cushioned with comfort or strained by hardship, whether they are celebrated or ignored, whether they are long or cut short. And here, the story bends again, back to the rhythm of the clock itself. For aging does not merely mark the years of life. It is measured relentlessly by the ticking of time. Birthdays, anniversaries, retirements, All are marked by clocks and calendars, by dates and deadlines. Aging is tracked not only in the mirror, but on paper, in schedules, in reminders, in milestones. The passage of life is quantified, recorded, and regulated by the very instruments that first taught us to sell our hours. The clock becomes not only a marker of time, but a tyrant, reminding us of its scarcity, dictating how we spend it, and measuring the approach of its end. And so, as we step from the fragility of aging, we move toward the deeper tyranny of the clock itself. For it is not only years that are sold and measured, but minutes, seconds, fragments of existence. The clock, once a tool, has become a master, dictating not only how we work, but how we live, how we age, and how we die. If aging reveals the limits of time, the clock reveals the power that enforces those limits. And so we turn now to the next hidden truth, the one that beats steadily in the background of every life, the tyranny of the clock, the unseen ruler of our days. Chapter 7. The Clock is Tyrant. If aging reminds us that years are finite and that life itself carries an expiration date, then the clock is the instrument that makes us feel this truth in every moment carving existence into fragments, reminding us with every tick that our time is running out. Where aging reveals the arc of life as a whole, the clock enforces its discipline day by day, hour by hour, second by second. It is the metronome of mortality, steady and impartial on its face, but in practice, deeply entangled with power, control, and money. We like to imagine the clock as neutral, a tool that helps us organize life, but the reality is far stranger. The clock is not only a tool we consult, it is a master we obey, one whose authority reaches into every corner of our existence. There was an era before clocks, when the rhythm of living was tied to nature. Dawn and dusk, seasons and harvests, hunger and fatigue, these were the measures of time. Life was circular, shaped by cycles, not divided into sharp edges. Work began when the sun rose and ended when darkness arrived. Rest came when bodies demanded it, not when a schedule permitted it. But with the invention of the mechanical clock, time was no longer organic. It was captured, segmented, abstracted into units that could be exchanged, counted, and most importantly, sold. From this shift, the very texture of human life was transformed. The rise of the clock brought with it the rise of labor as we know it. The ringing of bells summoned workers to factories. Hours could be measured precisely, wages calculated to the minute, productivity tracked and compared. Suddenly, life was not lived but scheduled. Children learned obedience through school bells. Soldiers marched to regimented time. Workers punched in and out, their value recorded in numbers. The clock was not a background instrument, but an overseer, ensuring compliance and extracting efficiency. Though it appeared impartial, its discipline served the interests of those who profited from labor. The clock was the first silent manager, a tool of power disguised as mere measurement. Pause for a moment and reflect on your own life. How many times do you glance at a clock each day? How often does it decide when you wake, when you eat, when you sleep? How many moments are haunted by the thought that you are running out of time, that you are late, that you are wasting minutes? This awareness does not come from nature. It comes from the clock. We have internalized its rhythm so deeply that even in silence, we hear its tick inside our minds, urging us forward, hurrying us, reminding us to stay productive. The tyranny of the clock is not only external. It is internal, a voice within us that never sleeps. Yet the tyranny is not distributed equally. Though the clock ticks the same for everyone, the way its rule falls on our lives depends on where we stand in society. For the wealthy, time feels abundant. They can buy back their hours through convenience, outsourcing, faster travel, better health care, and longer lifespans. For the poor, time feels scarce, stolen by endless labor, long commutes, waiting in lines, and systems that delay can demand. Two people may live through the same 60 minutes, but one experiences it as freedom, while the other experiences it as exhaustion. A clock pretends to measure equally, but in practice it enforces inequality. This inequality is sharpened by the way we value different people's time. An executive's hour is worth more than a worker's week. A consultant's minute is billed at rates that exceed what others earn in a day. The clock may not discriminate, but the system built around it does, assigning different prices to different lives. Time, which should belong to all equally, is stratified, rationed, monetized. The tyranny of the clock is not only that it dictates how we live, but that it silently enforces these hierarchies, reminding us constantly that some lives are considered more valuable than others. Think again of how the clock shapes your day. The schedule of your work, the deadlines of your projects, the appointments in your calendar. Even rest is measured, rationed into weekends, holidays, and retirement. We treat leisure not as a natural rhythm, but as a rare permission granted by the system. Even sleep is analyzed by devices, turned into metrics, judged for efficiency. The clock has colonized not only our work but our rest, not only our public lives but our private ones. We live not by seasons, not by the body's needs, but by numbers glowing on a screen, by hands circling on a dial. And yet, paradoxically, we cling to the clock because it comforts us. Imagine a day without it. At first, the idea feels liberating, but soon unease arises. Without hours and minutes, how would we coordinate? How would we plan? How would we know when to begin and end? The very tyranny of the clock has become familiar, so deeply woven into our being that its absence feels like chaos. We mistake discipline for order, control for stability, the cage for safety. Take a slow breath. Notice how the thought of running out of time feels in your body. The tightness in the chest, the rush in the mind, the anxiety that seeps in when you think of minutes slipping away. This is not simply awareness. It is conditioning. It is the result of centuries in which the clock has ruled us, not as a neutral guide, but as a tyrant that bends life toward productivity, efficiency, and scarcity. The tyranny of the clock is not that it ticks, but that it teaches us to live as though every tick is a loss, as though life itself is draining away unless put to use. It forces us to measure not simply how we spend our hours, but who we are by what we accomplish within them. Our worth is timed, our identities scheduled, our days sliced into fragments that can be judged and compared. In this way, the clock turns existence into a race against itself, one we cannot win, because every finish line simply leads to another hour, another deadline, another obligation. And yet, the deepest cruelty of the clock is not that it disciplines us all, but that it disciplines us unequally. The poor are trapped by its commands, their days consumed by obligations not of their choosing, their leisure stolen, their lifespans shortened. The wealthy bend time to their will, buying speed, buying longevity, buying freedom. Time itself becomes unequal, stratified by wealth and power. The clock pretends to be impartial, but in practice, it enforces hierarchy. This is the hidden face of its tyranny. Not universality, but inequality. And so, we arrive at the next truth. For the clock may tick evenly, but it does not rule evenly. It distributes its burdens differently, granting some the luxury of abundance while condemning others to scarcity. It carves time into unequal shares, ensuring that not all minutes are lived the same, not all hours carry the same weight, not all lives hold the same span. This brings us to the next chapter, where we look more closely at this imbalance, at the way time itself has become stratified, rationed, and commodified. If the clock is a tyrant, then inequality is its enforcement. The hours we live are not equal, and the division of time may be the greatest inequality of all. Chapter 8. Time Inequality. If the clock is a tyrant that disciplines all lives, then its rule is not even-handed, for the hours it measures do not weigh the same for everyone. The illusion is that time is equal, that 60 minutes for one person is identical to 60 minutes for another. But in truth, the value, the texture, the burden of those minutes are profoundly shaped by wealth and power. Some people's time is treated as sacred, expensive, untouchable, while others' time is seen as disposable, easily consumed, easily wasted. The tyranny of the clock, then, is not only that it slices life into pieces, but that it distributes those slices unequally, creating hierarchies of time just as stark as hierarchies of money. Think of a morning commute. For the executive, time is protected by private transport, perhaps even a driver, the minutes cushioned in silence or productivity. For the worker, time is consumed by crowded buses or trains, by long waits and traffic delays, by exhaustion before the day has even begun. Both leave home at the same hour. Both pass through the same stretch of time, yet their experiences of it diverge completely. One's time is preserved, the other's time is wasted. The inequality of money manifests itself as inequality of time. This inequality deepens across the span of life. The wealthy, with access to better health care, nutrition, and safety, often live years longer than the poor. Their time is not only more comfortable, but more abundant. A difference in income can translate directly into a difference in lifespan. Decades of life may separate those at the top from those at the bottom, as if the clock itself ticks slower for the wealthy and faster for the poor. This is the most profound inequality of all, not only how time is experienced, but how much of it one is granted in the first place. Pause here and reflect on the weight of this truth. Time is supposed to be the one universal currency, the thing we all share equally, for no one can create more of it. And yet, in practice, money buys years, months, days. The wealthy delay aging, extend health, and reclaim leisure. The poor lose time to sickness, to stress, to labor. Even the length of a life is unequally distributed. Time itself has been stratified, carved into classes, rationed by wealth. And it is not only the span of life that reveals this imbalance, but the texture of daily living. Consider waiting. For the wealthy, waiting is minimized. They skip lines, book priority services, avoid delays. For the poor, waiting is constant, in lines in clinics, in government offices, in transit. To wait is to pay with life itself, to surrender hours for no return. Waiting is not an inconvenience. It is a hidden form of taxation, one that falls disproportionately on those who cannot buy their way out of it. Time inequality is lived in queues as much as in lifespans. This extends into leisure. The wealthy can afford to rest, to travel, to spend their hours as they choose. The poor often cannot. Their leisure is fragmented, stolen between shifts, consumed by exhaustion. For some, time is a canvas, open and pliable. For others, it is a cage, rigid and unyielding. The difference is not in the hours available, for the clock ticks the same, but in how those hours can be used. The true privilege of wealth is not only possession, but control of one's time. Take another slow breath. Let yourself imagine your own hours laid out before you. How many of them feel like yours? How many are dictated by obligations, debts, schedules? How much of your time is free, and how much is consumed before you can even claim it? This is the essence of time inequality, that some live lives filled with own time, while others live lives in which nearly every hour has already been claimed. There is also the cruel way time is priced. Some people's hours are valued at hundreds or thousands of dollars, others at only a handful. The wage gap is not simply about money. It is about the worth assigned to time itself. One person's minute is worth another's day. This distorts how time is lived, for those whose hours are undervalued must sell more of them just to survive, while those whose hours are overvalued can reclaim theirs. The inequality of wages is, at its core, the inequality of time. This creates a hierarchy of urgency. For those with resources, time is flexible. For those without, it is rigid. The wealthy can delay, reschedule, take their time. The poor must rush, must submit to others' clocks, must endure the penalties of lateness. Time inequality is not only about hours lost, but about control lost. To lack money is to live at the mercy of others' schedules. To possess it is to dictate your own. And yet, perhaps the deepest cruelty of time inequality is the way it shapes our sense of self. Those whose time is constantly undervalued internalize the message that their lives are worth less, that their hours do not matter. The constant theft of time becomes a theft of dignity. Meanwhile, those whose time is protected and prized are taught to see themselves as important, valuable, even superior. Inequality of time reinforces inequality of identity, carving hierarchies not only into economics, but into the soul. Pause once more. Imagine how different life would feel if every person S-hour were treated equally, if the doctor's time and the janitor, S-time the executive's time, and the farmer's time were all honored with the same dignity. Imagine a world where no one's days were consumed by endless waiting, by exhaustion, by obligations they did not choose. Imagine a life where everyone had time not only to work but to live, not only to survive but to dream. Such imagining feels radical because our reality is so far from it. And yet this inequality is not accidental. It is structured, sustained, profited from. Systems are designed so that some people's time is consumed in order to free others. The employer buys hours from employees to secure their own leisure. The wealthy use the labor of others to extend their time. Behind every abundance of free time lies someone else's scarcity. Time inequality is not only cruel, it is systemic. But here, the story bends toward something even stranger. For if inequality in time exists in the present, it also reaches into the future. Debt and credit do not simply consume today's hours. They mortgage tomorrow's. The poor are often forced to borrow time they have not yet lived, to sign away their future in order to survive the present. Their tomorrows are not free, but already claimed, already spoken for, already in the hands of creditors. The wealthy, by contrast, buy futures, invest in them, profit from them. Inequality in time is not only about the now, it is about the days yet to come. And so we arrive at the next hidden truth, that the future itself can be bought, borrowed, and sold, that the hours of tomorrow are already entangled in the contracts of today. If time inequality marks the present, debt ensures it carries forward into what has not yet happened. The clock does not only tyrannize us now, it lays claim to our future. Chapter 9. The Future on Loan. If time inequality defines the present, then the logic of debt and credit stretches that inequality forward, binding the future before it even arrives. For those who have little, the hours of tomorrow are borrowed to pay for the needs of today, while those with much invest in futures yet unseen, securing wealth that multiplies before the clock has even ticked. The poor, in other words, live in debt to the future. The wealthy live and profit from it. And so, the days ahead are not untouched landscapes of possibility, but territories already mapped by money, already spoken for, already carved into obligations and contracts. The future itself has been mortgaged, and we are merely tenants of our own tomorrows. Think of a student taking out a loan to pay for education. Before they even step into the fullness of adult life, their future earnings are already claimed. Decades of labor are promised in advance to repay a debt accrued in the present. Their time is not their own, but leased to a creditor who may never meet them face to face, but who holds dominion over their future. This is the hidden weight of debt. Not only the numbers on a balance sheet, but the chains it places on tomorrow. Every plan, every dream, every choice must bend around the obligation that precedes them. The future becomes not a wide open field, but a narrow corridor leading to repayment. Credit cards, mortgages, and loans operate on the same principle. Each swipe of a card is not only the purchase of an object, but the signing away of future hours. Each mortgage payment is a promise of decades of labor yet to come. We convince ourselves we are pulling the future forward, enjoying now what we will pay for later, but in truth, we are shrinking the space of freedom in the years to come. Every convenience today is a contract for tomorrow. Every indulgence now is an erosion of possibility later. Pause and let yourself feel this. Imagine your own future stretching before you, years lined up like stepping stones. Now imagine placing chains on them, one by one, each representing a payment, an obligation, a debt that must be honored. Suddenly, those stepping stones are no longer open. They are weighted, restricted, narrowed. You will still walk them, but not freely. You will walk them already bound. This is what it means to live with the future on loan. For the wealthy, the relationship to the future is inverted. They do not borrow from tomorrow, but invest in it. They place money into funds, into stocks, into property, and watch it grow over time. Their future expands, blossoms, multiplies. While the poor sign away hours in advance, the wealthy accumulate hours, compounding their value. In this way, time itself becomes asymmetrical. The same future arrives unequally, burdened with debt for some, rich with promise for others. This system creates a strange paradox. The future, which should be unknown and mysterious, becomes predictable in its inequalities. One person looks ahead and sees opportunity, expansion, freedom. Another looks ahead and sees repayment, struggle, limitation. The very horizon of life is colored by money. The future ceases to be an open question and becomes a balance sheet, a ledger of what has already been claimed. And yet, debt is presented as empowerment. Credit is sold as freedom, as the ability to live now and pay later. We are told it gives us flexibility, that it expands possibilities. And in some ways, it does. It brings the future into the present. But at what cost? Each borrowed tomorrow comes with interest, with strings attached, with a narrowing of the days to come. Freedom in the present becomes servitude in the future. The very language of credit, buy now, pay later, hides the truth that paying later means living later, that your hours are no longer fully yours. Pause again. Let your thoughts drift to the years ahead. How many of them are already claimed? How many are bound to obligations you have yet to fulfill? How much of your future is truly open, and how much has already been rented by the decisions of today? This realization is unsettling, but also clarifying. It reveals the extent to which money reaches not only into the present moment, but into time itself, shaping not only what we do, but what we will be allowed to do. There is also the weight of national debt, where entire societies borrow against the future. Governments take loans that must be repaid not by those in power today, but by generations yet unborn. Children inherit not only the culture and history of their nations, but also the obligations of their debts. The future, in this sense, is not simply personal but collective, mortgaged on a scale so vast it seems almost abstract. And yet, its consequences are concrete, shaping taxes, services, opportunities. Entire populations live with futures that have been pre-sold by the past. This creates another paradox. The future, which we like to imagine as untouched, is already a marketplace. Futures are traded, speculated upon, priced. Stocks and bonds, futures markets, and derivatives, all are ways of monetizing what has not yet happened. The economy thrives not on the present, but on the anticipated, the imagined, the projected. We are not only mortgaging tomorrow, we are commodifying it, slicing it into products to be bought and sold today. The future itself becomes an economy, and we are merely participants within it. Take a slow breath. Consider how strange this is. That time, which should belong equally to all, has been carved into unequal portions, priced in advance, transformed into a marketplace. The poor borrow their tomorrows just to survive their todays. The wealthy purchase tomorrows, expanding their freedoms before they arrive. And in between, the rest of us live with futures that are neither fully ours nor fully free, shaped always by money's invisible hand. But here lies the most haunting aspect of all. When the future is borrowed, when it is bought and sold, something else is quietly taken from us. Possibility. For every future claimed by debt, there are futures that will never be lived. Choices vanish, paths close. Opportunities are lost before they are even seen. This is the hidden cost of living with the future on loan. Not only the burden of repayment, but the erosion of possibility itself. And it is here that we step naturally into the next truth. If the future can be mortgaged, then every choice we make carries with it the shadow of what might have been. The cost of debt is not only money, not only time, but the silent toll of chances never taken. To live with the future on loan is to live with the ghost of possibilities that slipped away. Chapter 10. The Price of Lost Chances. If the future on loan reveals how debt consumes the tomorrows before they arrive, then what it hides in its shadows is perhaps even more haunting, the futures that never come to be. Every loan repaid is not just a surrender of money and time, but also of possibility. Each commitment narrows the path ahead, and every choice made closes the door to 1,000 others. This is the quiet toll of life under money's reign. Not only what we give, but what we never get to experience. The cost of debt is measured not just in payments and hours, but in lost chances, the unlived lives, the unchosen roads, the dreams deferred until they dissolve. We like to imagine that our lives are filled with endless choice, that each day we stand at a crossroads, free to go in any direction. But in reality, our paths are constantly narrowed by financial constraints. A student burdened by loans may forego a dream career for one that pays more reliably. A family locked into a mortgage may turn down opportunities that would require relocation. A worker living paycheck to paycheck may never risk starting a business or traveling the world. Each decision made under money's pressure carries with it the ghost of another life, one that might have been, but never will. This is the paradox of opportunity cost, a concept economists define clinically, but which is felt deeply in the heart. To choose one path is to give up all others. To spend $1 is to lose what it might have bought. To invest time here is to surrender time there. We live surrounded by these invisible losses, though we rarely name them. We see the choice we made, not the countless choices that slipped silently away. And yet, those lost chances shape us just as surely as the roads we walk. Pause here and reflect on your own life. Consider a time when money forced you to make a choice that was less than what you truly desired. Perhaps you took a job out of necessity rather than passion. Perhaps you stayed in a place you wished to leave because moving was too costly. Perhaps you passed up travel, education, or love because the price was too high. Those lost chances do not appear on any balance sheet, but they live within you, forming part of the architecture of your existence. For the wealthy, the field of possibility is wider. Their money cushions risks, expands choices, opens doors. They can say yes more often, and when they do say no, it is usually by preference, not by necessity. For the poor, by contrast, the field is narrow, the options few, the choices constrained. Their no's are forced, their yeses limited. The inequality of money manifests itself not only in possessions and comfort, but in possibility itself. Wealth buys more chances, poverty steals them. The cruel truth is that most lost chances are invisible. We rarely see what might have been. We move forward along our chosen paths, never knowing the fullness of the ones left behind. This invisibility is part of what makes the cost so haunting. It is one thing to lose what you had. It is another to lose what you never even glimpsed. Money shapes not only what we have, but what we never will, sculpting the boundaries of our lives. So subtly, we often mistake them for fate. This becomes even more apparent when we think of time. Every hour spent on one task is an hour lost to another. Every year consumed by labor is a year not given to art, to love, to rest. Money dictates how these hours are spent, and in doing so, it dictates which lives remain unlived. The cost of survival is not only exhaustion, but the forfeiting of possibility. The life you might have lived if you were free is the hidden payment exacted by the economy. And yet, possibility is the essence of freedom. To imagine that you could live differently, to know that you could choose another path, this is what gives life its openness. To lose that possibility is to lose a form of freedom even more fundamental than wealth itself. What we call security often comes at this price: the narrowing of chances, the closing of doors, the acceptance of fewer possibilities. We gain stability, but we lose potential. Take another breath. Think of how many chances you have already given away, quietly, without even realizing it. The career paths not taken, the places not visited, the relationships not pursued, the dreams not followed. Each has left a ghostly imprint, a shadow of what might have been. Some of these lost chances may haunt you. Others may lie forgotten. But together they form a hidden cost of life under money as rain, the unseen toll of possibility itself. This truth raises a deeper question. Are we truly free if money dictates not only what we can do, but what we cannot? If it shapes not only our present, but the range of our futures, is freedom more than an illusion? For every chance lost to necessity, for every path closed by poverty, for every future mortgaged by debt, our freedom is chipped away. We continue to believe we are choosing, but in reality, we are navigating within boundaries set long before we arrived. And so, we come to the next stage of reflection. For if money narrows our chances, if it dictates our choices, if it sells us the illusion of possibility while stealing its substance, then what does that say about our freedom itself? Do we work for money in order to buy freedom, or are we always already enslaved to its demands? Is freedom a goal we can ever reach, or is it only another illusion, dangled like a carrot before us, but never attainable? This is the question we must face as we move forward. If the cost of lost chances reveals the erosion of possibility, then the next truth is even more unsettling, that what we call freedom may itself be a form of servitude, that our sense of autonomy may be shaped entirely by money's invisible chains. And so from the price of lost chances we step now into a deeper inquiry, the paradox of freedom and servitude, and the haunting realization that they may not be opposites at all, but two faces of the same coin. Chapter 11. Freedom or Servitude. If the price of lost chances teaches us that money silently narrows our possibilities, then the question that follows is inescapable. Are we truly free, or is our freedom another illusion shaped by money's reach? We like to imagine ourselves as agents of choice, captains of our own destinies, free to chart the course of our lives. Yet again and again, money intrudes, determining which doors remain open and which ones close, dictating not only the paths we can walk, but the ones we must abandon. And so the paradox emerges. What we call freedom may itself be a form of servitude, a carefully constructed illusion that keeps us believing in autonomy even as our decisions bend to invisible chains. To understand this paradox, consider how we define freedom in modern life. We speak of financial freedom, the ability to retire early, to travel, to live without working for others. We equate freedom with wealth, imagining that once we accumulate enough money, we will be free to live as we wish. Yet notice how strange this definition is. Freedom, something we might assume to be natural and inalienable, is treated as something that must be bought. You are not free by virtue of being alive. You are free only when you have purchased enough independence from the system. Freedom is priced, and until you can afford it, you remain in servitude. Pause and let that sink in. How odd it is that freedom, which we like to think of as the essence of humanity, has become a commodity. It is advertised, sold, and measured in bank balances and retirement accounts. The very language of financial planning revolves around freedom. Financial independence, freedom from debt, the freedom to choose. But what it quietly implies is that until money releases you, you are not free at all. Servitude is the default, and freedom is the privilege. This inversion stretches deep into the way we live. For most of us, work is not a choice, but a necessity. We labor not because we freely choose to, but because without it, we cannot survive. Our time is sold by the hour, our energy exchanged for wages. Even if we enjoy the work, the structure is one of obligation. We work because we must. This is not freedom. It is servitude dressed as choice, normalized so thoroughly that we rarely question it. And yet, the paradox becomes sharper when we realize that money uses the promise of freedom to keep us bound. We are told to work harder, to save more, to sacrifice now so that later we might be free. Retirement is painted as the great liberation, a time when finally the chains will loosen. But for many, retirement comes too late. Bodies are worn, dreams deferred, time shortened. The freedom they labored for never fully arrives. And even when it does, it is conditional, structured by pensions, investments, and healthcare costs. Freedom is promised, but rarely delivered in the form we imagined. Take another slow breath and think of how this plays out in daily life. The dream of freedom becomes a tool of control. It keeps us striving, keeps us compliant, keeps us serving the very systems that limit us. We obey the clock, we obey the wage, we obey the market, all under the belief that someday, if we obey long enough, freedom will come. But perhaps it never does. Perhaps freedom, as defined by money, is always just beyond reach, always delayed, always deferred. The Stoics of ancient times saw freedom differently. They argued that true freedom lies not in external circumstances, but in internal mastery, in the ability to remain undisturbed by what cannot be controlled. For them, freedom was about detachment, about refusing to be enslaved by desire or fear. In their view, the man in chains could be free if his mind was unbroken, while the wealthy merchant could be enslaved if he was ruled by his cravings. Compare this with our modern world, where freedom is defined not by detachment, but by accumulation, not by mastery of the self, but by mastery of wealth. Have we traded a deeper freedom for a shallower one? And then there is the Marxist critique, which flips the question entirely. For Marx, the structure of wage labor itself is servitude. Workers sell their time and labor to those who own capital, creating profit for others while surrendering autonomy. The illusion of choice, the ability to pick which employer to serve, disguises the underlying truth that most of us have no choice but to serve someone. Freedom under capitalism is not freedom at all, but a constrained menu of servitudes. The chains are softer, the prisons larger, but the logic remains. This paradox, freedom or servitude, is not abstract. It lives in us daily. When we wake to an alarm, when we rush to appointments, when we trade our hours for wages, when we calculate whether we can afford rest or must continue working, in each moment, we navigate the blurry line between freedom and servitude. We tell ourselves we are free because we can choose among options, but the options are always framed by money. The range of choice itself is limited, and so our freedom is more conditional than we admit. Pause again and imagine this. What if freedom could not be bought? What if freedom was not about accumulation, but about release? Not about ownership, but about letting go? What if freedom was found not in the promise of retirement or the balance of a bank account, but in the ability to live without needing to own, to control, to accumulate? Perhaps then, the question of freedom or servitude would dissolve, revealing that both are illusions shaped by the lens of money. Perhaps true freedom begins only when we step outside of money's logic altogether. And this thought carries us naturally to the final chapter. For if money dictates our servitude and even shapes our definition of freedom, then what remains outside of its reach? Is there anything untouched? Any corner of life unclaimed by price? The surprising answer may be yes. There are moments, fleeting, fragile, but real, that money cannot fully own. A breath of air, a view of the stars, the quiet of sleep, the small miracles of presence. These moments are gifts of unowned time, slivers of life that escape the economy's grasp. And so, from the paradox of freedom and servitude, we move into reflection on what is left when money's dominion ends. If freedom as we know it is shaped by money, then perhaps the only true freedom lies in what money cannot touch, in the gift of unowned time. Chapter 12. The Gift of Unowned Time. If freedom and servitude are revealed to be illusions shaped by money, then what remains is the question of what lies outside its reach. Is there any corner of life that money cannot buy, cannot claim, cannot measure? At first, the thought feels impossible, for money's influence appears everywhere, from the way we work and rest to the way we think and desire. And yet, if you look closely, there are moments, fragile, fleeting, but real, that slip beyond its grasp. These are the gifts of unowned time, stretches of existence that belong to no economy, no contract, no exchange. They are not bought, they are not sold, and they cannot be priced. Consider the moment of watching the sky change color at dawn, when the world is quiet and no one demands anything from you. That time is not owned. It exists outside of productivity, outside of labor, outside of commerce. Or think of the act of taking a deep breath, feeling air fill your lungs, releasing it slowly. That breath is yours, and no market can truly take it from you. Or think of laughter with a friend, unplanned and spontaneous, free of transaction. These moments are not commodities. They arrive unbidden, and they cannot be claimed. They are life itself, untouched by money's logic. Pause for a moment now as you listen. Notice that even in this act of resting, of reflecting, you are already within such a gift. Time set aside to drift, to breathe, to be. No one owns this moment but you, and yet even you do not hold it. It passes, slips away, resists capture. That is the paradox of unowned time. It belongs to no one, not even the self. It is not possession, but presence. This is perhaps the most radical truth of all. If money thrives by turning everything into property, then the ultimate resistance is found in what refuses ownership. A sunset, a breath, a drifting thought, the hush of falling asleep. These cannot be priced. They cannot be exchanged. They exist outside of the marketplace, and in their existence, they remind us of what it means to be alive beyond servitude. And yet, we often overlook them, because money teaches us to value only what can be measured. We rush past the unowned, dismissing it as unproductive, as wasted. We scold ourselves for daydreaming, for pausing, for resting. But perhaps what we call wasted time is in fact the most precious time of all, the time that belongs to no one, the time that cannot be bought. Think of the child at play, lost in imagination, unaware of the clock. Think of the moment of awe when you stand before the ocean, when the vastness silences every thought of productivity. Think of the quiet of sleep, when consciousness releases its grip and you drift into dreams. These are gifts, not because they belong to us, but because they escape belonging altogether. Take another slow breath and reflect. How much of your life is made of unowned time? How often do you allow yourself to step outside of the clock, outside of obligation, into moments that cannot be priced? The answer may be unsettling, for many of us live so bound to money's rhythm that unowned time feels rare. but it is there, waiting, woven into the fabric of life, if only we notice. The gift of unknown time is not only personal, but universal. No matter how wealthy, no matter how poor, each of us experiences it. The sun rises for all. The air fills every lung. The stars shine on every gaze. Though inequality shapes much of time's texture, these gifts remain outside its reach. They are the great equalizers, the reminders that beneath the layers of debt and labor, we are all beings carried by the same rhythms of existence. And perhaps this is the truest form of freedom. Not the freedom promised by wealth, not the freedom bought by retirement, but the freedom of unknown time, the freedom to simply be, to exist outside of transaction, outside of price. This freedom does not need to be earned. It cannot be bought. It is given freely by the world itself. And here lies the gentle hope that closes this long reflection. For if money controls so much, it does not control everything. There are moments no market can touch, moments that remain ours in their refusal to be owned. These are the spaces in which we can breathe, in which we can rest, in which we can rediscover ourselves, not as workers or consumers, but as living beings. So let this truth carry you now as you drift toward rest, that beyond money's grip, there are still gifts, unowned, unpriced, untouched. They arrive quietly, like the stillness of night, like the softness of sleep. They ask for nothing, they demand nothing. They simply are. And in them, we are reminded that life is more than labor, more than debt, more than servitude. Life is also presence, breath, wonder, and rest. And so, we move gently into our closing. From illusions of choice and chains of debt, from clocks and inequalities, from freedom and servitude, we have traveled far. And yet, we arrive here, in the most ordinary of places. The unowned moment, the quiet now. This is the space where sleep begins, where time softens, where the world releases its hold. This leads us to the end, an invitation to let go of every thought of money, every burden of time, and to drift into the gift of rest itself. If the gift of unknown time has shown us anything, it is that life is still more than the systems that try to measure it. After traveling through illusions and paradoxes, through debts and chains, through freedom and servitude, we arrive at this place of stillness. Here, in the soft space of the present moment, there is nothing left to analyze, nothing left to measure, nothing left to chase. There is only rest and the quiet realization that perhaps the most valuable thing you have gained tonight is not an answer, but a feeling. The recognition that even in a world where money seems to reach everywhere, there remain moments, untouched moments, unowned moments that belong only to being alive. Take a slow, deep breath with me. Let it move gently in, filling your lungs, then release it slowly, letting the weight of the day fall away. You are here now. You are safe. And this moment, this listening, this gentle drift, it is yours. It is not priced, not demanded, not owed. It is a gift waiting to carry you softly into sleep. Pause here. Notice how far you have come in this journey. You have explored the ways money weaves itself into choice, desire, time, belief, memory, even identity. You have seen how it shapes not only the hours of our days, but the very sense of who we are. And yet, through every reflection, there has been a thread, the possibility that life is larger than money, that beyond every chain lies a silence, beyond every demand lies a breath, beyond every illusion lies the gift of presence. That thread leads you here, to the end, where words soften into lullabies and thought loosens its grip. As you lie here, let realization settle gently, like dust in sunlight. The realization that not everything must be owned. Not every minute must be productive. Not every dream must be measured. You are not a balance sheet, not a contract, not a ledger of debt and obligation. You are a human being, alive in this moment, carried by breath, held by time, resting in the simple truth of existence. That truth is enough. You are enough. Now let gratitude bloom. Gratitude for the journey we have shared, for the patience you've shown in traveling through ideas and paradoxes, for the quiet presence you've given by listening. Thank you for being here. Thank you for giving your time, your attention, your presence. These words mean nothing without you, and this reflection would be incomplete without your company. I hope you feel that you have not only listened, but also been part of something, a conversation that stretches across silence, a reminder that even in rest, you are not alone. Take another slow breath, and with it, let go a little more. The day has done enough. The questions have been asked. The thoughts have been carried as far as they need to go. Now they can rest too. Let them dissolve, like footprints on sand washed away by the tide. There is nothing more you need to hold, nothing more you need to carry. Sleep will take care of the rest. As you drift, imagine yourself walking into a wide open field at night. Above you, stars stretch endlessly, ancient and unmeasured. Around you, the air is cool, the grass soft. Each star is a reminder that time stretches beyond clocks, beyond debts, beyond ownership. You look upward and realize none of this can be bought, none of it is owed, and yet it is here, freely given, lighting your night. That is the gift of unowned time. That is the gift waiting for you now, in the embrace of sleep. Let your breath slow further. Inhale gently, exhale softly. With each exhale, release one more piece of the day. Release the noise, release the worries, release the clocks, the debts, the obligations. With each inhale, invite in rest, invite in silence, invite in peace. Allow your body to sink deeper into comfort, heavier, softer, carried effortlessly toward dreams. And as your eyes grow heavy, know that this is the natural closing of our journey together. Not an ending, but a soft continuation into another kind of time. Time without clocks, time without price, time without ownership. Sleep is the greatest unowned time of all, a gift that restores without demanding, that carries without asking, that heals without cost. So I will leave you now with gratitude and with a blessing. Thank you for walking with me through these reflections. Thank you for finishing this journey. May your night be gentle. May your dreams be kind. May your rest be deep. Sleep well, sleep tight, and know that you have earned this peace. Good night.